Hi, my name's Anna Serin. I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. You're joining us for a CSE podcast here live at Beaver Creek at the Precious Metals Summit. I am joined with Max Cunningham, CEO of the National Stock Exchange of Australia. Thank you for making it all the way here, Max.
It's great to be here. This is my first Precious Metals conference, and it's been a real eye-opener. I think, we've had some great conversations, met some interesting companies. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, well, why don't we start by why are you here with us? Let's start with that.
Well, you invited me, and it was a very gracious invitation, and it followed through after you guys, we agreed to effectively get taken over by the CSE. So I think we've known one another, you and I,
yes,
for a long time, and
right.
Got to know CSE well in the last 12 months, and obviously last time we were together was at PDAC, and that threw up some great opportunities. Since then, CSE has announced that it's taking over the National Stock Exchange of Australia, and we're just seeing, I think, greater cooperation, not just between the exchanges, but between Australia and Canada in general.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about, first of all, you are currently listed on the ASX
Correct.
in Australia.
Yes.
The acquisition is set to close this fall.
Correct.
And then you will be a member of the CSE family, which we're all very excited about.
Yes.
Let's talk about the potential opportunity. Why is this so great for both of us?
Look, I think, let's talk about Australia first. I think we don't have a venture market, and NSX has been trying to fill that space, but we've done it with limited resources. You mentioned us being public, and we've had really limited bandwidth in terms of our cash flow, our ability to invest, and I think ultimately that is what CSE is bringing to the party for us.
Yep.
We are going to invest in technology, people, and even the rule book,
yes,
to make NSX the venture market in Australia. So that's us. Now, obviously, you'll benefit from that by owning us, but I think more importantly, Canadian companies on CSE are going to benefit from that, because we really see a huge opportunity for dual listings, and a lot of those dual listings will be Canada into Australia. Longer term, we'd love to see Australian back to Canada as well. The doors have been firmly shut for a lot of Canadian companies in terms of accessing capital in Australia. As you very well know,
yes,
we received regulatory support for CSE becoming a recognised exchange in almost record time by the regulator.
Yep.
So CSE sits with NASDAQ, NYSE, SGX, NZX, some of the leading exchanges in the world in the eyes of the Australian regulator. So it's great opportunities for CSE as a market and for CSE as a company.
Yeah, I think one of the real catalysts that got us coming to Australia and starting this whole process was that our issuers, they're really having to look outside of Canadian borders to access pools of capital.
Yep.
Australia has an unbelievable retail market. It really is spectacular what you guys have. Maybe you could just touch on that a little bit, why it's so liquid, why valuations have, a better opportunity sometimes in Australia.
Yeah, look, I think on the investor front, and for those who don't know, we've got this compulsory pension, superannuation, whatever you want to call it, that's been in place since the early 1990s, which is 12% of everyone's pay, and there's a lot of people that manage that individually, and they love stocks. Like, Australians have always been big investors, retail investors, through the big privatisations in the 90s as well. And one favourite sector of those investors is mining, mining commodities. Outside of that, obviously, we've got a vibrant sort of family office, high net worth, and I think they all feed into that sort of liquidity notion.
Yeah.
I'm probably less experienced or skilled to comment, on that valuation difference, other than we know there's periods where certain asset classes or certain companies will be valued higher in Australia than they are in Canada. And that makes sense for a lot of companies at different points in their life cycle to be able to either take advantage of that arbitrage or raise capital in the market where those valuations are being sought after.
Absolutely. I also know that from my experience in going to Australia, the Australian investors love Canadian projects.
Yep.
They are big fans of Canadian projects, but they also like to invest in a local exchange. So although they can access us in Canada, they do like investing in the local exchange. So this is a real opportunity for our issuers to access those pools of capital, for Australian investors to access Canadian projects, right?
Oh, look, 100%. And, I think if you look at everything that's gone on in the last 10, 15 years regarding AML and things like that, the ability for what we would call retail or even relatively sophisticated to open brokerage accounts in foreign countries is harder.
Yeah.
And so having that listing, Australians do like to have their shares held on CHESS as well, which is our local national registry. There's a whole range of those reasons, I think, that you've just identified why Australians would prefer to buy those assets on the local market.
Yeah. One thing I think is truly unique is that there's always this dialogue around dual listing, right? And accessing these other markets in a place where the local investor has better access or easier, more cost-effective access. But it is very hard for issuers to have two regulators and two exchanges and the costs of being a public company in two different countries. And I think one thing that's very unique about this transaction is because we have done as best as we can to be streamlined process and cost effective, and I know that the National Stock Exchange of Australia has a similar mindset, it really is unique that you're going to be able to access two jurisdictions in a cost-effective and streamlined manner.
Yeah, I think all the points you've made are well made, but I'd probably go beyond that. Obviously, you'll have the only place in the world where one company owns two exchanges in very complementary jurisdictions, being Australia and Canada. I think, secondly, that whole notion of being customer focused, where we're not there taking the business for granted. We know you're not either, and I think there's a very strong common philosophy. And then I think when you overlay that, we've got some unique benefits that don't exist on the other exchange in Australia, and that is we allow direct listings or compliance listings, and with that recognition I mentioned earlier, by ASIC, our regulator of CSE, that's going to cut a lot of red tape and enable those listings to come to NSX relatively friction-free.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing too, just to touch on the National Stock Exchange of Australia, is that I think there is some symmetry in the expertise that grew in the CSE in building out the CSE. It's kind of viewed that the NSX is where we were maybe 15 years ago, and that we can bring some of the skills and expertise and support in helping build that out in Australia, which doesn't currently exist really at this point, right?
No, I think absolutely, unreservedly. Well, the flip side of that is you look like where we'd like to be. Hopefully less than 15 years. We've talked a lot about Canada or Australia, but the reality is, I think, we want to serve a broader market than just mining and just Canadian dual listings. A lot of asset classes are being left on the shelf in Australia. The capital markets aren't being able to service them. Digital assets, I'd say renewables, things like hydrogen projects and things like that. These are not getting admitted into the capital markets. And then beyond that, we've had a long history of being able to do startups and list early stage life sciences companies, and the screws or the capital that's being required to put up front is making those businesses' ability to list tougher and tougher and tougher. And that's the other market we really want to fill as well.
I mean, here's the thing, and this is something we experienced, is these emerging sectors, they need to move quickly. There's usually a lot of capital that is there to fund them, but they need to move quickly and efficiently. And so these kind of challenger exchanges, I think, are really the opportunity for that. I mean, we're seeing at the CSE, a large amount of AI companies that are starting to come to us. And so, our listings department, the regulators, we all have to move quickly to be able to move along with these emerging sectors, which is something that you'll be able to offer Australia as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thematic is there is, like in most parts of the world, there is a drop-off in the overall net number of public companies.
That's right.
And that's becoming a real acute concern for the government and for the regulators. And that's why I think this transaction, the investment CSE is going to make in NSX, and the opportunity for cross-border and new industries is, I think, getting appropriate and encouraging regulatory support.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what the reaction's been. So we announced this It's been a few months
May.
that it's been announced. Okay.
Mid-late
And
May.
we're having this conversation in September. The transaction's due to close very soon.
Yeah.
But what's the reaction been from the community in Australia?
Well, the biggest reaction is get on with it. We need you yesterday.
Great. That's great.
I would say, whether you're talking about brokers, whether you're talking about the law firms,
Yep.
whether you're talking about the issuers, and whether you're talking about other stakeholders.
Yep.
Okay, and that includes regulators and policymakers. I think the recognition that the single market, single rule book that we have in Australia,
Yep.
I call it the one size fits all,
Yep.
does not work.
That's
okay?
right.
And then the second macro thematic is we currently do have an effective monopolist running the market.
Yep.
They've had a number of regulatory headwinds themselves, and I
That's
think
right.
everyone in the market knows the importance of competition for pricing, the importance of competition for decision making, and the importance of competition in transparency of policy making and how companies access the market. So. Look, we're yet to encounter anyone who has a sort of negative perspective on it. It's more about when does it get done,
Yep.
And when do some of the investments that CSE wants to make get rolled out,
Yep.
and I think with the support we've already had from CSE, some of those. Us being here in Beaver Creek is
right.
indicative of that's working now.
And the conversations we've had this week have been very positive. Everyone is really excited.
Absolutely.
The reaction in Canada has been great. Our issuers are so excited. And issuers from any exchange to finally have a more cost-effective, streamlined approach to accessing Australian markets.
Yep.
Max, we are so excited about this.
Yes.
Richard and I will be heading to Sydney in October.
Fantastic.
We're going to be spending some time together with your team. Hopefully the transaction will close around then. The IMARC conference will be happening. We'll be traveling to Perth. And so hopefully we can do some more recordings and talk more as this all unfolds.
That's fantastic, and please give my best regards to Richard whenever you see him.
I will. Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you so much.